Disk management. What is disk management? Disk management is a system utility used for managing hard disks and their volumes. With disk management, a user can initialize the disk, create and format the volumes. Disk formatting. Disk formatting is considered as the first step of disk management. A new magnetic disk is a blank slate. It is just a plate of magnetic recording material. Before a disk can store a data, it must be divided into sectors or sections that the disk controller can read or write. This process is called low-level formatting or physical formatting, dividing the disks into sectors or sections so that the controller can read or write the data. Header and the trailer contains information used by the disk controller such as sector number and an error correcting code also known as ECC. When the controller writes a sector of data, the error correcting code or the ECC is updated with the value calculated from the bytes in the data area. When the sector is read, the ECC or error correcting code is recalculated and compared with the stored value to verify if the data is correct.
Disk partition. To use a disk to hold file, operating system still needs to record its own data structure on the disk. The first step is to partition the disk into one or more group of cylinders. The operating system can treat each partition as though it were a separate disk. For instance, one partition can hold a copy of operating system executable codes while another hold the user files. The second step of a disk partition is a logical formatting or creation of a file system. In this step, the operating system stores the initial file system data structure onto the disk. Those data structure may include map of free and allocate space and an initial empty directory. To increase the efficiency, most file system groups block together into the large chunks, frequently called as clusters.
Raw disk. Some operating systems give program the ability to use disk partition as a large sequential array of logical blocks without any file system data structures. This array is called raw disk. The input output to the array is called raw input output. Raw input output bypasses all the file system services such as buffer files, file locking, prefetching, space allocation, and file names. We can also make certain applications more efficient by allowing them to implement their own special purpose storage services on the raw partition. Boot block. The initial bootstrap program tends to be simple. It initializes all aspects of the system from CPU registers to device controller and the content of the main memory and then starts the operating system. Most computers bootstrap is stored in read-only memory. A disk that has a boot partition is called a boot disk or a system disk. The code in the boot ROM instructs the disk controller to read the boot block into memory and then start executing that code. In the given diagram, the first sector on the hard drive is known as master boot record and contains a very small amount of code in addition to the partition table. The boot program then looks to the active partition to find an operating system, possibly loading up the slightly larger or more advanced boot program along the way.
Bad block. Bad block is an area of storage media that is no longer reliable for the storage of data since it is completely damaged or corrupted. Disks have moving parts and they have small tolerances, therefore they are very much prone to failure. Sometimes the disk completely fails, and when the disk fails completely, then you have to replace that disk and the contents are restored from the backup media to the new disk. Now depending on the disk and controller, these blocks can be handled in a variety of ways. For simple disks such as disks with IDE controllers, the bad blocks are handled manually. For instance, the MS-DOS format command performs logical formatting. What it does is it scans the disk to find the bad block and After finding the bad block, a special value is written into the corresponding FAT entry, so that the bad block cannot be used. Even sometimes the block goes bad while during the normal operations, and when that happens, a special program called the check disk must be run manually. What it does is searches the block which has gone bad and it locks it away, but the data which was in that block which has gone bad is usually lost. Then there are sophisticated disks such as the SCSI disks, which are used in high-end PCs and most workstations and servers. These controllers maintain a list of bad blocks on the disk. This list is initialized during low-level formatting at the factory, and it is updated over the life of the disk. And the low-level formatting also sets aside spare sectors which are not visible to the operating system. These controllers can be told to replace each bad sector logically with one of the spare sectors, and this is known as sector sparing or forwarding, when the controller replaces the bad sector with the spare sector. Such a redirection by the controller could invalidate any optimization by the operating system disk scheduling algorithm. For this reason, most disks are formatted to provide a few spare sectors in each cylinder and a spare cylinder as well. An alternative to sector sparing is sector slipping.